How are you, Van Haven? We're all ventriloquists. We're all multiple people. I said, how are you, Van Haven? All right, it's great. Well, my name is Matt Bailey, and I host a podcast that's an online radio show for ventriloquists. As Mark said, I've been doing it for about a year, and I've had on a lot of awesome guests. Now, you can find us at ventriloquismweekly.com, and I know many of you have listened to this before, and some new recruits, so welcome to the show. But what you didn't know is that since I do these interviews with these ventriloquists, when I was in elementary school, I would get in trouble for asking too many questions. So what you didn't know is that you're in fact encouraging the bad habits of a former second grader. But today is great, and look, that microphone is the same microphone as was in the video, and I think it's just echoes broadcasting, and I want to recommend this microphone, you'll see in a minute, over there, to all ventriloquists in this room, because it doesn't matter how good you are, you use that mic, nobody's going to see your lips move, okay? In fact, when I get over there, you'll all think I'm doing ventriloquism, not the truth, okay? It's great to be here, dressed. Because, context, when I do the interviews, they're over the phone in my house. And the first time I interviewed Jay Johnson, is Jay here? Okay. I was wearing my footy pajamas, so it gets to be a very, very comfortable situation. And I think we are ready to get started. Are you ready to see two great ventriloquists? Awesome, awesome. Both ventriloquists have tipped this art form on its head. One is a musical ventriloquist who does unconventional things with his characters, just incredible. And the other is an awesome vant who uses his canine companions as his onstage partners. And through my research, I found that they both hold deep ties to each other throughout this art form, not the least of which is that they are both former Branson, Missouri performers. Would you please help me welcome Mr. Jim Barber and Mr. Todd Oliver. Come on out here. What? Hey, Matt, where should we go? I'm over there by the weird mic. You're right here. The office mic. All right. Now let's put this down.
I just drove in, and boy, are my arms tired.
Yeah.
No, that's not right.
All right, you guys are great. Hey, all right, it's time for the questions. Can I have my cards, please? Hey, that's a stagehand. Wait for the stagehand. Okay. And that's a bad joke is what that is. Okay. All right, guys. How are you? How was your trip in?
I just got in like 10 minutes ago.
Yeah. Todd, scoot up. I can't see you.
Oh, awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
No problem. They can see. I just can't.
Oh,
so
the drive was great. The weather's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's beautifully green around here. Mm-hmm. It's going to be blue pretty soon with some of these performers, but it's wonderful.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
Oh, let's not go there.
No, it's wonderful to be here. Can we start over?
Yeah.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jim Barber. No, okay. All right, let's get started. So, in front of everybody here, why ventriloquism? What fascinated you about this incredible art form?
Well, I'll start. I grew up in the bastion of show business, Rapid City, South Dakota. And I didn't know anybody in entertainment, let alone ventriloquism. But Wayne the Magician used to come to my school when I was in elementary school. And so I was interested in doing magic. And then I watched Sherry Lewis and Edgar Bergen on television. And I went home and started learning to do ventriloquism. And kind of became the king of the birthday circuit in my hometown and did birthday parties all over through high school. And then in college, I wanted something to fall back on, so I studied engineering. And my accomplishment, the biggest accomplishment my first year of engineering school was that I won first place in our school talent contest with my ventriloquist act. So,
wow.
So I decided I need to be on stage, so I went into broadcasting at the University of Minnesota and worked in local kids TV for a while, and that's actually where Todd and I met, because Todd's from Minnesota. And again, I wanted something to fall back on, so I studied broadcasting, and I ended up going to Opryland to do my act on the showboat General Jackson. And I just, I kept having things to fall back on, but ventriloquism kept paying the bills. So I've all these years, over 40 years now, I'm still doing it, and I love it. So thank you.
Incredibly lucky that kept paying the bills. No matter if you had the backup, but it was still supporting you, even though you were planning for it not to. So it's very cool. Todd, how'd you get started?
Well, like most of us, I saw Charlie McCarthy and Danny O'Day and Jerry Mahoney in Leicester.
Huh.
And I was instantly charmed because, and I'll say something, for years I carried around the Mayer catalog #2. And Fred Mayer wrote some things in that catalog that always stayed with me. And the one phrase was, the figure has to have that pixie-like charm. And that, to me, is the best exemplifies any of our figures, our partners. And there was something about back when I was a kid, when you'd watch Charlie McCarthy or Lester, or when you'd laugh, you just felt great. You were charmed. You were laughing, but gosh, you were charmed by that innocence and that wonderful feeling you get, and when like you and your mom and your dad can all laugh at the same joke, and that little wooden head looking up and mouthing off and getting away with it, but not hurting anybody's feelings. Yeah. That was such a great thing, and so when I was 10 years old, and I got my Charlie McCarthy dummy for Christmas, and then my dad died 3 days later, and he was sick a lot, and so the ventriloquism helped me with my depression, and as a child, and it kept me busy, and I worked as a volunteer for the Minneapolis public school system, and it was a crazy thing. High school, I didn't really care for high school, but I was so busy as a volunteer ventriloquist that I got a great deal. I got put on the work. I got put on the work program in high school. So back in those days, if I didn't have any intentions of going to college, I wanted to be in show business. And this lady that helped me in the volunteer business, she worked it out where I got on the work program. So I only had to go to high school 3 hours a day, and then I get out of school to go do my act. And back in those days, being on elementary school stages, and that's where I learned how to work an audience and how to control an audience, and dramatic structure with an act and all that. And I was also a musician. I was in a rock and roll band at night playing with a bunch of old hippies, and that was fun. So I'd do my act in the daytime, and then at night I was playing in clubs. Yeah. And my mother told the guitar player, yes, he can go with you, but if he gets in trouble, you're in trouble. So it was great. We had this hippie bus, and I'd be gone for sometimes a couple of weeks on the road playing these clubs, and I'd always bring the figure with me. And if we play at a club in Duluth, Minnesota, during the day I'd call up to schools and say, hey, I'm a ventriloquist, I can come over. Yeah, sure, come on over. And so I kept busy, and I guess the point of what I'm saying is keeping busy is what helped me survive. And not having, it's important that a child has a mom and a dad, in my opinion. It's very important. But I had great role models, and one of them was Willie Tyler. And I'm glad that we're honoring him at the convention, because I really believe that Edgar Bergen gave ventriloquism class, and Willie Tyler made it cool. Right?
Yeah. Incredible.
So, and then I just started working. I just started working every joint you could work. I got out of the rock and roll business, and I got the figure, and I met Jim, and I was so bad I had the dummy in one hand, the joke book in the other, and but Jim said, "Hey, come on my TV show," because Jim had that Casey Jones show, and so I went on. And Jim, I said, "Hey, I'm getting back into this, Jim," and he said, "Here, I'll help you," and Jim helped me, and then. It's kind of crazy because Jim worked at General Jackson Showboat, and then you went on to the college gig, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, then I was working this old tub of a cruise ship in Florida, this old ship, and the Opryland people had the singer-dancers on the ship, and they saw me do my act, and they said, hey, we'd like to have you come and work on the General Jackson. We had a ventriloquist before, Jim Barber. I said, oh, well, you know. So then ventriloquism just took me through, there was a time when you worked the school show circuit, and I used to do 4 towns a day, 5 days a week. I was a bachelor, of course, and I made $70 a show. You make just enough money to eat, pay the motel, and starve, but I was in show business, and I was working the schools, and I had a good act that I could make a living at, and then the cruise ships, and then the comedy club toilets, then what happened? Then I got that showboat thing where we worked, and then Branson saw me there, and then I got a break. My agent from Los Angeles saw me and got me a bunch of television stuff, and then the money went up, and but I was in review shows for 20 years. Which you do your act every night and you do 20 minutes and boom, boom, boom. I had to do 16 minutes for 7 years on that boat, that General Jackson, and then in Branson I did like 23 minutes, and then but I always did club dates, the one-nighters, after dinner things. Right?
Yeah, and then Jim, you did colleges. You were able to do colleges, and the thing I wanted to. It's just interesting how they different circuits, schools and colleges. You worked colleges and you worked them clean. How were you able to do that? Clean for colleges.
I think that was what the colleges wanted, really. I mean, they have a lot of families that live on the campuses. A lot of the faculty would bring their families. So every night we did a show. Primarily, it was a mixed audience, and. I was interesting. My agent was Bob Kramer from Grand Rapids, Michigan, and I don't know if any of you know Bob, big bad bald Bob Kramer. And he was a magician in the college market for many years and started an agency. And so he started booking me, and boy, did he book me. I mean, all over the place. But I did about almost 2,000 campuses in 10 years. And so it'd be like 5 or 6 different cities every week. And I was in every state in the country. And we would do what we call nooners, where we'd do a noon show. We would do teasers. If the show was in the evening, we'd run around campus. I would. When I say we, I mean Seville and I. Nobody's laughing. All right. So, and we would promote the show, and then the students would come in, and I'd do the show, and then pack up and take my deli tray and hit the road and drive 500 miles and get a few hours of sleep and get up and do it the next day. And it was a great deal of fun. I loved doing it, but the colleges were really a hip audience. Things started to change when MTV came on,
right?
Because music videos changed the way that entertainment was packaged. Everything became small, short, little bits, and so I saw the attention span start to change with our audiences, and so I had to start changing my routines a little tighter and make them shorter and smaller and mix them up a little bit more, but. It was good training for me, and during that time I did a Bavarian Fest in Frankenmuth, Michigan, opening for a young guitar player named Glenn Campbell, and worked with Glenn for a couple shows. Only got to know Glenn about 5 minutes, but became pretty close with his road manager and his band. And 6 years later, I get a call from them saying, we're opening a theater in a little town called Branson, Missouri, and we want to put a variety act in the show, and we kept thinking about that weird vent act we worked with. And so we tracked you down, would you like to come to Branson? And at that point, just the day before, I was praying, I need to get off this circuit, it's killing me, I need a break. And then they called, and so I was, yes, Lord, thank you, and that was my first time to be in a big production show and work with a live band, live music, and it was really, really great. And Glenn and the whole band, we became like family, and we worked together for 3 years, and then stayed in touch, from then on, and then that brought me other opportunities in Branson, and then I went away and I got into multimedia, and I kind of thought I was going to get out of show business for a while, but things kind of, like I said, everything I try to fall back on ends up. I go back to ventriloquism, and
and sorry to interrupt you both. I just want to get the most out of this for the time that we have. That you bring up an interesting point. What kept pulling you back? You'd prep for these other things, and then you'd come back. What kept pulling you back?
I had bills to pay, you know, and that's it. Money's a good motivator, you know.
Yeah.
I like performing. I mean, this is, as a kid, I always knew at 10 years old this is what I wanted to do when I grew up. And I think, you know, if a kid can have a dream and a vision at that age, it's a lot easier for them to achieve it because they don't have to think about how am I going to get there. They know what they're going to do, so it just happens. And when I was about 10 years old, I had a man come up to me and he gave me a really huge compliment. He was the mayor of my hometown, and he told me that he reminded me of a friend of his, and he said, "You have the gift of gab." And he goes, "I used to work with a fellow on variety shows, and his name was Johnny Carson, and you remind me of him." And I was only 10, but that was the biggest compliment, and I never forgot it. And so I have always tried to compliment young people when I can and build up their esteem, because that's really important. And it doesn't matter if they stay in ventriloquism, but if you love what you do and you learn as much as you can about it, and especially learn business, because it is show business, and the business part is just as important. But you know, when you're young, follow your dreams, because you got one life, and enjoy it, you know, and do what you want to do. Because start young and you started old, follow your dreams, because it's a lot of fun to make people think you're strange. So.
Yeah, and Todd, you got into music, mostly music, and then you got pulled back to Vent. How'd that happen?
I wanted to have car insurance. Well, actually, the music changed. You know, that's the other thing. I had a group. You know, I wrote all the songs, and we were recording, and we had some things brewing. And we were on the road, but we weren't making any money. The roadies were making the money, and the roadies got paid. We really didn't. And then the music changed, and it's really when MTV started, because all of a sudden the kind of rock and roll we were doing, it was kind of like a power pop rock and roll, very influenced by the Beach Boys and the Beatles with a little heavier guitar, and it changed. And all of a sudden, you know, it's hard to keep a group together too. You know, I mean, gosh, you know, we had a bass player that had a problem drinking, and you know, it felt like a babysitter sometimes. And I just got tired. You know, I got tired of it, and I'd missed ventriloquism, and I knew that if I got back into it, I could control my own thing. I wouldn't have to depend on the other guys. And
but I have to add, you
yeah.
are a fantastic musician and a great piano player.
Thank you.
If I could play piano like he would, that's what I'd be doing.
Oh,
so.
well.
He has, I got to interject here. He has a new special out. Some of you already bought it at Walmart, called Todd Oliver Funny Dog. You filmed it in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
And a lot of the music that you hear in it, he wrote. His intro, outro, and some of the songs he does, some of the stuff he does on it are parodies, but some of it he wrote himself. So if you get that DVD, you get to hear a lot of what he does, both sides.
Yeah, it's odd. I hope I haven't got paid yet for it. It's in every Walmart and Barnes and Noble and all these other places, but I haven't got paid yet. And but you know, that's show business. Oh boy, got his TV special. Oh, big deal. Anybody got $5? Yeah, but you know, I have a band now. I put a new band together in 2008 because see, I did the Vent thing for 20 years in review shows. I could do my act I could do my act and make up my grocery list at the same time. I don't mean to be disrespectful towards ventriloquism, but I mean, man, it was time to do something else, and I had to, you know, and my daughter was starting school, so I put a band together, and we're still together, and they tour with me now. We have a tour starting in January, 70 opera houses, and we leave. Don't have much work right now, but it's great to be doing the music and the Vent. But the reason I went back to Vent was because at that time, I could just rely on myself, and I could make a nice living. And I got into ventriloquism to make a nice living. As a ventriloquist, I never had any aspirations of being on television. I really didn't. Mark Waid and I both have talked about this. When you walk into an elementary school with your little PA and your figures, what a great feeling to be knowing you're getting paid to entertain and hopefully inspire youngsters, and just being on the road and playing those nice little dates. I just loved it, and the checks never bounced, and you know, gosh, it was nice, and So that's probably why I got back. I got burnt out. I was in the rock and roll band from I was 15 till I was 24. By the time I started in show business when I was 13. So by the time I got to be 24, I was a little burnt out too.
And when you got back in, you did the dogs. Now, last time we talked in. Shameless plug, you go to Ventriloquism Weekly, you'll hear another interview that I did with these two about a year or so ago. And so it's great because at that time we barely scratched the surface, so it's great to talk to you again. You talked about how the Villains, a great circus act, they gave you the idea about doing the dogs, and you ran with it because that had been done in vaudeville before, but nobody was doing it.
Right.
Why did you, but again, it has to click with something inside of you. So why did you decide to run with it, and why did you decide to put your spin on it and go for those dogs? Where did that come from?
I was working on that showboat for 7 years in Nashville, and I had a good dependable act. I could, the punchlines are close together, bam, 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 something I could always depend on. But I wasn't getting any more television. I did those television things that we both did.
Nashville Network. Ralph Emery.
Crooked
Music
Chase.
City Tonight. Crooked
all those
Chase.
things. We both did all those things, but I couldn't get booked back on. I mean, I'd done 2 appearances on all the shows, and the producer, remember Bill Turner? Remember him? Very, very nice. Great. I wish everybody was in television was like him. Such a nice guy. You go in, you need to make an appointment. Such a nice guy. He said, "Well, what else have you got, Todd?" I said, "Well, I got some other material." He goes, "No, what else do you have?" I said, "Well, I got new jokes." No. I said, "Well, I've got this idea." So I worked with Medora musical. Did you work that one? Did you work?
I didn't work Medora, but
you went to it.
That's was my inspiration also, besides Wayne the Magician. When I was 9, we went to Medora, and I saw John Shirley from Chicago do his marionette act with these big marionettes, and I went home and started making puppets, which led to ventriloquism. Years later, I got to do a corporate show with John Shirley about 2 months before he passed away, and I told him that he was my inspiration, and he said, get a real job. But he was great, and he was doing the exact same routine like 30 years later.
You know what I remember about John Shirley was he said, I remember at a magic convention, a bunch of magicians were complaining about money and about, we're not making as much as we were making 5 years ago. I remember John Shirley said, "Hey, if you want to work, the economy, got to ride the wave." And he just cut right there. If you want to work, quit complaining, take the job, and ride the wave. And I thought that was so important.
Well, it's true. I mean, we've been in it long enough to realize that it does go up and down.
It's pretty low right now.
There are going to be dry spots, and there will be some really good spots. But, we both work Branson. Branson's a great place to live. It's a beautiful area. But Branson grew tremendously fast with the entertainment, not only the shows, but other attractions and restaurants and waterfront properties and sporting things. And so there's literally hundreds of things for people to do every day. There's over 100 shows every day that people can pick from to go see, live stage shows. And so when you're marketing a show in Branson, and if you own a theater in Branson and you have a staff of people, the money adds up real quick. And sometimes, the expenses outweigh the profit. And so I was doing, I spent almost 20 years in different shows, but 10 of those years was my own show with our theater. And I loved doing it, and it's great to control your own lighting and your sound and, kind of know what you're going to expect every day.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of work, but that's where I really learned a lot about marketing, because my real job was marketing the theater and keeping it running. And my playtime was the 2 hours that we were on stage doing our show every night. And so I loved doing it, but it was a lot of work. And so I decided after 10 years that was a good time for me to start focusing on other things and starting to
like cruise ships,
force myself to grow again, because I was feeling a little bit like I was on a hamster wheel and I wasn't really progressing. And I like learning new things and trying new things. So I'm back doing some cruise ships this year. I did them years ago, but the industry has changed a little bit. But I'm excited about it. I don't want to do it forever, but it's one of these things where you go where the work is, and you take the money that they offer you, and you say thank you very much, and you go out and you do your best. But
and thank you again for touching on Branson, because get a little personal for me. That's where my interest in show business started, was watching some tapes from Branson, and you stayed involved. Yeah. Branson. Yeah.
Let's do the joke. Come on, do the jokes. Do the joke.
All right.
Come on.
Okay. Okay.
Hey, I know my line. Come on.
Okay, you do the joke. I
wanna hear the
Come
joke.
on, you know the
okay,
joke. Do it.
fine. No offense to Branson. Here we go. How do you make a small fortune in Branson?
Start with a big fortune.
Jim is nodding. This is good. Okay.
It's true, yeah.
It's true. It's
But
true.
that does lead to an issue. I want to touch on it real quick. It's changed. The landscape, the entertainment landscape, and the financial landscape, as you said, has changed. As somebody who's involved in the politics of that town, where's it going to go? What's going to happen to it?
Branson's going to continue to grow. We've got a population now about 10,500. When I was first there, it was 3,000.
Yeah.
When I first went to visit it, it was like 1,000. I should have moved there then and bought land, but I didn't. And but it's going to continue to grow, but it's becoming more of an all-around destination. Sports is a big thing. We have golf there. Wonderful Jack Nicklaus designed a golf course there that the PGA is now coming to for the next 4 years. They just did a big PGA tournament that was nationally televised, and that'll be on for the next 4 years. And we've had the Ironman competition come in, and racing, and water sports and ski board competitions, and all kinds of wakeboard competitions, and wonderful things for young kids and families. But the entertainment is still there. We don't have as many names, but I think it's because, back in the 70s, all the variety shows on television, Glenn Campbell, Jim Stafford, all those big shows, Tony Orlando, they all came to Branson, and they did very, very well. But now the demographics are changing, and after the 70s variety shows, we went into the rock and roll era, and most of those guys split up, like you were talking about. And so it's harder to get the groups together, and there aren't as many names. But now we're starting to see some different people coming in, Neil McCoy and others, and we still get the big Bill Cosby comes in once a year, and we get a lot of one-nighters that come through on tours, and they do great. But Branson's in a little corrective cycle. I think we could use a few less theaters, maybe a few less shows, but more quality. Our biggest show in town is Sight and Sound Theaters. There's one in Pennsylvania. They are doing the most phenomenal show I've ever seen in Branson right now, called Jonah, about Jonah and the whale, and it rivals any Broadway production. It's huge and fantastic, but so we've got something for everybody, but it's changing. I live there. I love living there. I'm not working there right now, except helping out. I'm on the chamber board, and I do help with some marketing and promotion, but doing the cruises and keeping my options open.
All right, so let's get back to the event. We talked to Todd about the dogs. I want to ask you, Jim. Things like Chico, Barber, and Seville. You've talked about just you got to be yourself. And Todd, you can weigh in on this too. But I want to know specifically from you, what makes Jim Barber? In that, let's not just do the event figure on the stand and stand next to it. Let's tip that on its head.
Well, I think it's because I didn't know any other ventriloquists growing up, and I really didn't know what I was supposed to do. And the first time I saw other ventriloquists live was when I came to this convention in I don't know, 80, 85 maybe, or something like that. I was in college, and I didn't realize that I had a little different take on some things, but it's important to try to be unique if you want to do this as a profession. You have to have something to make you stand out, but everybody has something unique about themselves, and if you find out what that is about you that you do best, accentuate that, you'll be the greatest of anybody at what you do.
And Todd, again, uniqueness, bringing in the music. How has that influenced what you do with Vent?
The music?
Yeah, just your experiences in music, in Vent.
Yeah, well, my approach to an act is kind of basic. I always believe that you can start your act with a little music, and you can close your act with a little bit of music. And I wrote my own songs that would introduce me and the figure, and then to wrap things up with the figure. So if the material, if you had a cold crowd or having a bad day or whatever, if you can always get out with the song. You can do the song and take your bow, and it's over. You don't have to leave the stage on a cold line or a cold joke or whatever. So that helped. That's how I used the music, and it makes your act a little bit longer. But it's important if you're going to open your act with a song, it shouldn't be really more than 1 minute and 10 seconds long. Really, you should never do you can close your act with a song. To open
now
an
you
act.
tell me.
Well, to open an act. I mean, for me, now maybe it works different for other people, but for me, I did a fast song to open the show. But actually, and I didn't do my own song I did another song. I did the old Benny King song, "Stand By Me," to open my old act, and it was fast. It was up. The audience can watch your lips for a minute, and they can digest what they're seeing, and then you're into your first line, and boom, then you're going. So this opening song can help get things settled, and then closing your act with a song. I mean, I think the one I'm using now is about 2.5 minutes at the most. 2 minutes and I can't remember. But, so that's how I looked at it.
Yeah.
And then for the dog thing. So I worked with the Medora musical, outdoor review show, and I worked with a great juggling act, the Willems, fastest juggling act in the world. They did it 8 minutes, and they did more in 8 minutes than a lot of people do in an hour.
In their 80s.
I know it.
Yeah.
I know
And they
it.
spun plates, and she stood on his head
Yeah.
and juggled.
I'd get to work at night, and they'd be throwing those clubs. Now, show's at like 8 o'clock, and they'd get to work at like 6:30, and they'd be throwing them clubs back and forth, warming up for almost an hour before they did their act. I mean, the old circus folks, those work ethics of, practice and being on it. I mean, I really admired them. They were really cool. Anyways, they said, hey, you should use a dog in your act. There used to be we saw a guy, he did an act, but it didn't work out for him, but you should do it. Mm-hmm. And I went, yeah, because I always loved dogs. I've always had a dog, except when I was on the road full time, but so I kept procrastinating. Now here's a lesson for everybody,
Dangerous.
for the young people, and don't procrastinate. I should have done it when they told me to do it, but I had a good solid act I could depend on, and I didn't. And I made some calls. So a couple of magician buddies told me, hey, you got to call this guy. He can help you with the idea. I called him, and then that didn't work out. I called this guy and I had to do a lot of digging around. I ended up having to pay for my own research and development for the bit. And so then I did it, and I got it, and I got a dog. And, and as soon as I did, I got a letter from a guy in Vegas accusing me of stealing his act and saying the nastiest stuff. Man, it's so strange to be hated. And this cat, he didn't really have much of an act. Mm-hmm. That's the thing, But he had a flapper on his dog, so what? There's a bunch of guys in Paris that use a basset hound with a flapper. But I invented my flapper, and I wrote my lines. I paid for the research and development for my flapper. Yeah. I wrote my lines. I used a couple stock lines, but I write 90% of the material. Mm-hmm. Every now and then I take a line here that fits, I can plug it in, big deal. And I just kept working on it. But I didn't have all the bugs worked out. See, the original one worked on a servo motor, like an airplane thing, you fly around. Well, you never know when those things are going to go out, right? So I'm doing this gig in Wisconsin, a club date, and I used to bring the dog after the figures, bring the dog, and I put the dog up on the table, and he went, I left my... I didn't even get through the song, and the dog can't talk now. Sing, you! Say something, man. I went, well, I guess he's not going to talk tonight. I said, maybe I can get, hey, you, and you come up here and then do the audience bit. Okay, yeah. So that got me out, that got me out of it. And then we were doing that TV thing in Vegas, Oak Ridge Boys, live in Las Vegas. And the morning of the gig, the gizmo broke. Mm-hmm. We're taping the TV show at like 3 or 4 in the afternoon. That morning it busted. So the guy from LA flew up and fixed it. God bless him. And then, I realized that was a real drag. That thing, you couldn't depend on it. So then you just keep, networking and talking to people. I found a brilliant engineer who I paid to redesign it. And then that one worked for a while. It was dependable. And then I found another guy, and I just invented paid for the new one, which is not a mask anymore. It's just a piece under here. And I always wanted one that you couldn't tell the dog had something on. And I paid for it. It cost a lot of money. And so I don't claim to be the first guy that had a talking dog, but my talking dog and my mechanism is mine. And those are my lines, and that's what I do, and that's my thing. And the good thing about it is because my old act made me a good living, but the dog got me on television.
Great.
And the dog got me a great agent in Los Angeles and New York. And the dog opened some doors, you know. I mean, it was timely. It was good. I wish I would have done it a few years earlier. So that's how it worked out, you know. A lot of money, a lot of research. You gotta be on it. You gotta keep improving it, you know. Yeah.
And Jim, the thing you've done on television that we know you from television for is music. Your act is music, whereas with Barber and Seville and the wonderful thing with the song from Les Mis with the baby. So can you talk about forming that?
Well, the Barber and Seville actually was a dream I had one night. Because I used to do a kids show, and I had a standard figure named Freddie. And one night I dreamed I was watching David Copperfield. And David Copperfield walked out on stage with my dummy. And he made it grow tall, and then he shrank, and the dummy walked off. And I woke up screaming, and I thought, oh, what a great idea. But that's David Copperfield's idea. I can't do that. So I went back to sleep. And then all of a sudden I stood up again and I went, wait a minute, that was my dream though. I'm going to go back to sleep and dream about the Statue of Liberty disappearing.
Yeah.
So I started building this dummy in my apartment. I made it out of fiberglass, and I had never worked with fiberglass, and I didn't realize if you work with fiberglass indoors that you can never get rid of the smell. So I almost got kicked out of my apartment, but I built the first Seville, and that's what got me into Opryland performing. And then I made another Seville, which is still the one I use today. But when you were talking about mechanisms breaking, it reminded me of a time where I was working at Squawga's Nugget in Sparks, Nevada. And it's a union stage, so the stage hands have to move your props. They have to raise your microphone. You can't touch anything. So I did my act, and I had to take Seville off. I wasn't allowed to even set him down myself. I had to hand it to the union guy, and then he would set it down for me. And we were doing 2 shows a day, like a 5 and a 9. And so I did the first act, handed him Seville. He set it down. I go out and do the rest of the act. I come off stage, and he's standing there white as a sheet. And I go, what's the matter? He goes, well, he had put Seville on the piano, but it fell. And Seville's head was in 7 pieces on the floor.
Oh, no.
And I had a show in 3 hours.
Oh, no.
And I'm going, what do I do? So I ran to Walmart, got a hot glue gun, plastic wood, all the tempura paints I could find, and he was back together by showtime.
Wow.
And he's still today in the same, he's a slight hairline crack in there, but he's still hanging together after all this time.
That is incredible. Yeah. That's just wow. All right, well, I would like to open this up to some questions just for a few minutes. We're running a little short on time here. I would like to open this up to some questions from you guys in the audience before we say goodbye to Jim and Todd. Anybody out there? Any questions?
I got a question. Todd, how did you choose what breed of dog you'd use?
My brother suggested the Boston Terrier. I was going to use a Basset Hound, and I did use a Basset Hound later on. That dog's head's on the wrong end. You ever have a Basset Hound? Their hearts are bigger than the world, but they're going to do what they want to do. That dog would never. In fact, the act I did with the Basset Hound, that act was written on stage. Georgie Schindler told me one time. He said the best material you'll ever write is the stuff that you create on stage, improvisational, ad-libbing, messing around on stage. It's true. I mean, the dog, Basset would never stand still. He would always turn around, And, he turned around, well, where did the audience go? Stuff like that, Because he was kind of being on that showboat in Branson for 13 years, I had to I had to change the act, So I started with Irving, the Boston Terrier, because I liked that look. I didn't want a cutie-looking dog. I want a dog, a Boston Terrier, it looked like he chased a car and caught it, And the first Irving had huge bloodshot eyes, and he had crooked mouth. He looked, he was you ain't gonna win no beauty pageant. And so I wanted that look, because, you have to look at your, as events, you have to, okay, what do you look like? Okay, you have to make sure you know who you are, define your personality, your character. Are you Are you the little choir boy image? Are you the tough-looking guy? Well, if you're the tough-looking guy, then maybe your figure should be something a little sweet, maybe, right? If you're, you have to look at that contrast. So I knew that the Boston Terrier would be a good contrast to me too. So, and they're small. You can travel with them. Problem is they're real cancer prone. And the original Irving died at 9 years old. He died in my arms. He had a stroke.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, real drag. Yeah.
I know you're a big star and you go to big places.
Oh.
Has any hotel ever said, no dogs allowed?
Oh yeah, it happens all the time. Actually, even if the agents clear it, and I never think you're very kind. I don't see myself as a big star. I see myself as a working man. I'm a working man. I'm trying to make a living, and well, you're very nice.
Oh, you're the one.
Yeah, he's the one. My fan is here. There's one. Well, the thing is, the little dog easy to travel with. But the motels, yeah. The worst is Hollywood. That's the worst town. You can't. The only place that has a dog is at Best Western on Gower and Franklin. That's the only place I can stay. They let. I say, wait a minute. You guys let drug dealers stay here. You let hookers stay here. You won't let my dog stay here? My dog's cleaner than most of the people in this flop house, So, but
I have
usually.
a line, but I can't use it.
So it's but you do your best. You got to call ahead. And for years, I had a manager for 10 years. His office was very good about arranging it. But still, people goof up. And then all of a sudden you get there and they don't allow the dog. It's a road, but I was at working some date somewhere and they wanted me to stay at a big fancy place. I said, no, I told my manager, just give me a buyout for the room. I don't need to stay at that fancy joint. No, I'll go stay over here at the Red Roof. I'll get in, I'll do my gig, get back to the Red Roof and get home. Pull the car up to the door, unload your gear, never leave your figures in the car, ever, never leave them overnight in the car, never, ever do it. Howie
I'll
Olson.
be right back.
Howie
My
had
room
his
wasn't
figures.
ready yet. I have to.
Dad, go the van.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm rambling on. Anyway, I hope that was all right, buddy. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Thank you. God bless you, buddy.
Over here.
My son's brand new to the event. I was going to see if each of you had one line of advice to somebody who's brand new at it as to your golden nugget of advice.
Yeah, that's great.
Just have fun with it, enjoy it. When you're young, don't worry about what you're going to fall back on when you grow up.
Yeah.
But follow your passion, but also study it as much as you can. Learn as much as you can about it, and like I mentioned before, learn about business and how to handle money and how to save money. Because if you do anything as a profession, there are going to be hills and valleys, and so if you can learn to put some of that money away and save it for the lean times, you'll be much happier that you did. I'm speaking from experience, so. But but also be open to other things that you're going to like as you grow up too, because your interests may change, and don't feel just because you have one hobby that you can't adjust it into something else too. But just enjoy yourself, have fun.
And volunteer. Get out and do your act. Don't worry about the money. But when you do that, and this goes for everybody, very important to make sure you book your act in a place where where you have an audience and the conditions are good. I'll never forget, I got a call one time from my agent to open for James Brown. I said, nope, that's not a good combination. James Brown and me? Nope. This is before the dog. This is when I had the figures. I said, no. And they hired a comedy magician, and the audience chased him off stage both shows. Not a good combination. Got to know who you're opening for. I remember one time I got booked at a weird gig, July 4th, outdoors. It was 104 degrees. Good luck getting a laugh. You can't play every date. You can't play every date, and there's dates that are not good for event. But you and your dad can figure out the good ones. Malls are real tough. People are walking around and all this racket, all this noise. I know acts that play fairs and there's all that noise of the tractors and they're doing their act, and then nobody can hear. What a drag.
But at your age, start doing shows in your basement, I used to put up posters around the neighborhood and invite kids and charge them a nickel, and then I ended up having to pay them a dime to come in.
Yeah.
And then church shows and Cub
Church
Scout
shows.
blue and gold banquets, and
Yeah.
you just do anything you can. And eventually, I was just doing shows. I never even asked to get paid. I was just
Right.
happy to go out and do it, and it was fun, and they thought it was cute. And then Betty Brink gave me $3 for a birthday party show one day, and I turned pro.
Who books
So-
that gig?
Who books that gig?
Great.
I'll tell you if you give me 10%.
So my last question to both of you is, what do you want to see? We're in front of a convention of people that are learning this art form. What do you want to see from them, from ventriloquists today?
Money?
Yeah.
I've got some figures for sale. I do. Come and see me.
I want to, I'd say, ask questions. Come on up and talk to all the pros that are here, because they're here because they love it, first of all. I mean, Jeff Dunham wouldn't come here every year if he didn't just totally love this. And I'm just thrilled to be back. It's been many years since I've been able to, because in Branson, this week in July is the busiest week of the year for our show. And I couldn't leave it because we had we had to have shows. And so this year I said, I'm not doing a show, I'm going to Van Haven.
Right on.
And so I've had this on my schedule ever since last December, but it's really a wonderful thing, because I tell people I'm going to a ventriloquist convention, and they go, oh, huh? And then they get the image of 600 people walking around with 600 puppets, and it's very unique, and you don't see this anywhere in the world. And this is an art form in a world of streaming video and flat screen televisions and robotics. This is something that's simple and old-fashioned, and
Right.
it's important to keep that alive.
And it
I
makes it
think.
special. It's special again.
It is
It's special.
and-
There's never been too many people doing Vent. It's never been burnt out. It's special. And another thing too about this Vent convention, I remember when I made the switch out of the bands back to Vent, all of a sudden I was meeting these nice people. I mean, I worked with some guitar players. I think they were auditioning to be Satan.
Yeah.
I worked with some nasty people, awful people, and it was. And then but then we went in 1985. That was the first time I went here. And all of a sudden, you meet all these nice people. And the events I used to meet on the road, there were always nice people. Ventriloquism attracts nice people. You are all nice people. It just works out that way. It's what a blessing. God is, it's an incredible blessing that you can be in an art form with nice people.
And I think,
Right.
I think
Yeah.
people in ventriloquism like to help others. They like to share,
Yeah.
and they like to help create smiles. You get more out of it when you make somebody else smile. It makes you feel good too. So,
Absolutely.
So that's the fun thing. If you can hang on to that and keep that part of it, the job doesn't become a job, really. I mean, there are days when you do this on a nightly basis that it can become a drag sometimes.
Yeah.
But you have to take yourself back to, why did I start this, and why am I doing this? Because when you realize that, then it keeps it fun, and the rewards are there too.
so many nice people here this week, and two of the nicest up here, Mr. Jim Barber and Mr. Todd Oliver. Thank you for your time. All right.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you. Now, before I get out of here, I want to thank you guys for listening this past year. Get this thing back situated. I want to thank you guys for listening this year. It has been a lot of fun. For those of you new recruits, it's ventriloquismweekly.com, and you can listen to it. There's links on there to all our Facebooks. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter. Basically, just Google Ventriloquism Weekly at this point, and you'll be able to find it. There are 43 episodes, and this one, when this goes up on a Monday, airs every Monday. This one will go up as number 44. Now, I know the shameless promotion time. I have something. Dad, come here. My lackey. Oh, he's behind me. All right. We have, it's a podcast you get to listen to in your car. You can put the podcast on your car, the Ventriloquism Weekly bumper sticker, even with our signature microphone there on the bottom. I know it's hard to see. They're $6. See me or my family, or they will be on Jeff Golk's table. I have worked that out with Jeffrey Golk over in the dealer's room. And I think that is it for me. Signing off.
How about a hand for Matt Bailey for putting this together, huh?
Matt Bailey,
Yeah, man.
you put the odd in
hard-working young-
podcast.
He's a hard. Matt's roadied for me on shows. He's a hard-working young man, and he dots every I and crosses every T. You're a hard-working young fella. You're a good guy in Vent. Right.
Thank you very much. All right, I've had a blast. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for letting me do this. Oh,
Another big hand for Todd and for Jim and for Matt right here.
and thanks
All
to
right.
Ken, Tom, Mark, everybody for letting me do this, and Mark in the back. Thank you so much.
All right.